President Biden is opening up the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for the largest release in U.S. history.
The plan is to release roughly 1 million barrels of oil a day from the reserve for about 6 months. The move comes as gas prices have hit record highs because of the pandemic and the U.S. ban on Russian oil imports following the Ukraine invasion. AAA says the average price for a regular gallon of gas is $4.23 this morning. To put that into perspective, that's up more than 60 cents from just a month ago and more than $1 from a year ago. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli joins us now. Good morning, Mike. So what's the president saying about this plan and any long-term solutions to try and cut down on oil and gas prices?
Well, Joe, as you put it, we've never really seen gas prices this high, and we've never seen a president do what President Biden announced he was initiating yesterday, drawing down the Strategic Petroleum Reserve 1 million barrels a day. That over 6 months, that's 180 million barrels. That's well more than he's already announced in the last 4 months, 50 million barrels in November, another 30 million barrels earlier this month. The president saying that this kind of urgent action is needed because of the situation we find ourselves in because of Russia's invasion in Ukraine. Here is what the president had to say about this yesterday.
This is a wartime bridge to increase oil supply until production ramps up later this year. And it is by far the largest release of our national reserve in our history. It will provide a historic amount of supply for a historic amount of time, a 6-month bridge to the fall. And we'll use the revenue from selling the oil now to restock the Strategic Petroleum Reserve when prices are lower.
So we'll see these supplies start moving immediately. And then the question is, of course, whether or not we'll see the impact at the pump. But the president ultimately said this is a bridge. We're going to see domestic oil producers pick up their supply as well by the end of the year. But ultimately, the real answer is getting a transition to clean energy. And that's why the president also invoked the Defense Production Act to try to acquire and produce more of the rare minerals that are needed for things like high-capacity batteries that are really the engine, literally, of electric vehicles and other storage that is needed for solar and other green energy supplies.
So, Mike, let's talk more about the impact. The announcement had an immediate impact. Crude oil prices dropped after the president's announcement. But here's the thing everyone wants to know. How long will it take until we actually see those lower prices at the pump?
Yeah, this was a question that was asked in many forums yesterday to Kate Bedingfield, the White House Communications Director, to Brian Deese, the National Economic Council Chairman. And they said, obviously, this is a market situation that will take some time. It was significant to see the oil markets move so significantly yesterday, 6% by the time we were in the briefing room yesterday afternoon. But ultimately, this usually takes weeks before it translates into lower gas prices. But the real question is also whether our allies, some of the other international partners, will match the U.S. action here. There's an emergency meeting of the International Energy Agency today in Europe. That's also going to be a forum for some of our allies to discuss releasing their own reserves as well. If they were to match the kind of significant action that the U.S. has taken, it would put a big dent as well in the oil supply issues.
Mike, President Biden is also telling Congress to crack down on oil and gas companies. What is it that he wants lawmakers to do?
Yeah, this was an interesting part of the president's announcement because we've heard from Republicans, we've heard from some of the oil companies that the president, his policies have really constrained oil production here in the U.S. And the response from the White House has been that there are thousands of federal leases for oil companies to drill on federal lands that they're just not using. And so the president called for what he called a use it or lose it policy that Congress would have to pass and act into law that would fine companies that are not using those leases. And here is some of the political rhetoric that we heard from the president on this yesterday.
This is the time, not the time to sit on record profits. It's time to step up for the good of your country, the good of the world, to invest in immediate production that we need to respond to Vladimir Putin, to provide some relief for your customers, not investors and executives.
So you heard that, both reminding that this is Putin's price hike, as the president has called it, but also really calling out some energy producers who are, as the president put it, trying to profiteer here. Now, the American Petroleum Institute, which represents Americans' oil's industry, put out a statement saying that what the White House is saying really is a fundamental misunderstanding of how this works, that actually the percentage of leases that are actually being used right now is at an all-time high, and that the answer is for the president, for his administration, to cut some of the red tape that would allow further production to go forward.
All right, Mike Memley kicking off our coverage this hour. Thank you, Mike.
So President Biden's oil plan comes at a time when his approval ratings are at their lowest, while gas prices are near their highest. But how much money will this actually save you? NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has this story.
Well, President Biden is releasing a historic amount of oil from the reserves as gas prices here in the U.S. continue to rise. Soaring gas prices leading President Biden to take drastic measures. Tapping into the U.S. Reserve again, announcing plans to release 1 million barrels of oil every day for the next 6 months.
Your family budgets to fill a tank, none of it should hinge on whether a dictator declares war.
The move marks the largest release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in history. The previous record set in November when Biden released 50 million barrels. This latest release comes just weeks after the president banned imports of Russian oil, gas, and coal due to the war in Ukraine.
We will not be part of subsidizing Putin's war.
Now, regular unleaded gas is averaging more than $4.20 a gallon, up more than 60 cents from just a month ago.
It's horrible. I'm not even filling my car up anymore.
Like many Americans, Isaiah Lahone is feeling the squeeze. He commutes 2 hours from New Jersey to New York every day to sell sneakers in the city.
I gotta make an extra $100 just for gas.
As the weather warms up, he's considering trading in his car for a bike until prices cool down.
You gotta carry everything with you on a bike, but it's like you rather work harder or pay more money.
Even with the influx of oil, experts say the pain at the pump may not be going away anytime soon.
We're not talking about weeks, we're probably talking months.
Realistically, how big of an impact is this going to have?
Unfortunately, in the near term, not a lot.
The latest NBC News poll finds Americans' top concern is the cost of living, jumping up from 4th place in January. About 38% of Americans blame the president for the rising costs.
Instead of just arguing about who's to blame for it, we decided to take immediate action.
Some states are taking matters into their own hands. Maryland, Georgia, and Connecticut suspending gas taxes, with at least a dozen other states considering a similar move. California, which has seen some of the nation's highest gas prices, is also considering a $400 rebate per car to help offset the rising costs. The oil release could free up as much as 180 million barrels of oil, but that's only part of Biden's plan. He's also hoping to increase U.S. oil production by urging Congress to make companies pay fees on unused wells on federal lands.
I'm calling for a use it or lose it policy.
Still, questions remain about whether any of that will be enough and just how long Americans can afford to wait. And experts I've spoken to say that if the oil reserve release was the only factor, gas prices could begin to go down in 6 to 8 weeks. But there are global factors to consider here, including whether other countries will choose to become less reliant on Russian oil and seek that energy out from other sources. Now, given that, the expert I spoke with says that Americans likely won't see prices decrease at the pump, but they probably won't go up because of this oil that is being released.
All right, Priscilla Thompson, thanks so much.
This morning in Ukraine, government buses are again trying to get civilians out of the besieged city of Mariupol.
Yeah, Ukraine's deputy prime minister said yesterday's team failed to get in, but a new attempt is happening now. A small convoy of Red Cross vehicles had also been stranded in a nearby city due to concerns over security guarantees. NBC News foreign correspondent Molly Hunter joins us now from Lviv. Molly, good to see you. So how is this latest evacuation attempt going today? We know these people have been there without basic humanitarian needs. Are there any signs that this will be different than previous efforts?
Savannah, Joe, good morning. Yeah, not great news yet, at least. We are talking to people who are watching the situation very closely from the ICRC. There are two things happening today. There was supposed to be an ICRC humanitarian convoy going in and civilians coming out. Now, our understanding at this hour is of those 45 buses, which you mentioned, which have lined up waiting to go in, 42 are ready to go in. They're planning to take 2,000 civilians out. Now, according to the ICRC, they have gotten past kind of the final checkpoint. They are able to go into the city, but they are not able to take any of that life-saving aid in with them, which is interesting because last night they made a huge statement. They announced that they were going to bring in all of this life-saving aid. They made sure Russia knew, they made sure Ukraine knew, and according to the Ukrainians, the Russians are stopping that, are blocking that this morning.
Molly, I also want to ask you about the situation at Chernobyl. So Russian forces had captured the former nuclear plant really right at the beginning of this conflict, and then essentially a hostage situation had unfolded of the employees there. But now we're hearing from Ukrainian authorities that they've now left the site. What's the latest there?
Yeah, and it's really hard to get information out of there. We have asked the IAEA for any additional information, but this is the tweet that they have shared. They say they have not been able to confirm reports of Russian forces receiving high doses of radiation while being in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, and they're seeking further information in order to provide an independent assessment of the situation. So we're certainly chasing any more additional information on that. The reports, though, are that the Russian troops have left because they were exposed to radiation.
All right, something certainly to watch for there. Now, Molly, I want to ask you something on the other side of the border over in Russia. We're getting these reports of an oil depot on fire in the Russian city of Belgorod. The region's governor says it was attacked by a Ukrainian airstrike, again, on the other side of the border, which would be a somewhat significant development, but we have not been able to verify that. What can you tell us about this incident, and have Ukrainians said anything about it?
That's right. So this would be a significant Ukrainian counterattack if it's true. Belgorod is just on the other side of the Russian border, inside Russia. Now, Ukrainian officials have not confirmed to us. NBC News has not been able to independently confirm that this has happened. Now, Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, did just mention it in his press conference. All he said was that the president has been informed about this, and it's not helpful for the peace talks. The peace talks, of course, getting underway again. Virtually not a lot of hope, though, on either side, especially with trust so low. Savannah.
Absolutely. All right, Molly Hunter, thank you so much. Stay safe. And now let's get a check on your morning news now. Weather?
Yeah, after a busy week, Bill Cairns joins us with the Friday weather. Hey, Bill.
Hey, happy Friday to you guys. And yeah, the severe weather outbreak ended yesterday with day 3. We're not going to see a severe weather outbreak today, so that's great. But it was just another dangerous day. Yesterday, we saw those storms that were pretty strong in Ohio, Pennsylvania. Even Washington, D.C. was under a tornado warning at one point. They just had some wind damage around D.C., no tornadoes. But in all, yesterday, 4 tornadoes, 67 high wind reports, a total of 71 in total. So how about the month of March? It does appear we're likely going to set the record. This is preliminary. They have to go and, add up all these numbers and confirm it. But 233 tornado reports in the month of March, 15 days with tornadoes, 19 different states. You notice Iowa, Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Panhandle of Florida with the most tornado reports. Pretty crazy month of March. And by the way, typical on average for March is about 95 tornadoes. So this was like, easily double, almost 2.5 times what we normally would see. So what do we have left today? We still have the storm that brought us all the severe weather moving through the Northeast. Behind it, a pool of cold air, and that's triggering snow this morning from Pittsburgh northwards to Buffalo. So yeah, April Fools to you. And watch out this afternoon. Remember a couple days ago, we had those snow squalls and that horrific accident in Pennsylvania. Potential for something similar today. Snow squall risk through Pennsylvania, western New York, especially areas of West Virginia. So a snow squall is almost like a summer downpour. It only lasts about 5 to 10 minutes. It's in and it's out. But when you're driving, all of a sudden the roads can get very slippery and whiteout conditions. And that's why you have potential, at least, for a lot of accidents. So for today's forecast, we'll say goodbye to the rain in the Northeast as we go throughout the day. Florida, you're still kind of stormy, but not severe weather. And areas that got hit hard by the tornadoes and severe weather this week, like Atlanta to New Orleans, everywhere in between. A nice day today for your cleanup. We'll give you the weekend forecast coming up and your April outlook. I certainly could use a little quieter April than March.
I bet.
I think we all could.
We're wishing you that, Bill. We're wishing you quieter April. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.